Hello, Kris here, Green Sabre, Doom Telly Time, episode 54, and I'm doing a ranking this week, because I couldn't really think of anything else to do, so, ranking time. Updates so far, Green Sabre, nothing new to report. We were supposed to rehearse this weekend, Sunday, you'll be watching this Monday, supposed to rehearse Sunday, but with the inclement weather, yeah, the fact that I didn't want to get stranded over rehearsing Preston, it's quite a drive for me, so I didn't want to get like fucking blown to Barrow in Furness or something, so yeah, we decided to give it a rest this weekend just in case. So yeah, no rehearsal. Crow's Blood will be rehearsing as you watch this tonight. So as you're watching this, I'm probably rehearsing currently with Crow's Blood, working on new material. Can't wait, yeah. Physical copies of the stuff incoming. We're having a slightly protracted issue with our cassette people currently, so we are working on that one, don't worry. But yeah, you know, good things come to those who wait. But yeah, it's all in the pipeline, it's all under control. But yeah, physical media coming soon, so yeah, watch this space. And the other update, of course, Godthrymm, nothing new to report. I can't remember if obviously I mentioned the fact that I'm in Godthrymm now, which I'm still very excited about. Last weekend we started recording new material for a single release, future single release this year at some point. So yeah, that went ace. Really, really good. Some of the guitar tones I'm getting are absolutely crushing, so I can't wait for you to hear that. But yeah, all going great. So yeah, beavering away in the background. We have had one gig confirmed so far. We've got a few others that we're just awaiting being able to tell you that they're confirmed. But the one that we got confirmed so far is this year's From the Crypt. Rich, shout out Rich, from Gods of Hellfire. It's his little venture. We were fortunate enough to play it last year as Green Sabre. We opened it and I must be honest, we've never looked back since. So yeah, it was great for us, but no repeats. So, but I've managed to get on it again this year under a different band. Godthrymm are headlining it. That is From the Crypt. Easter Sunday, 31st of March, I believe. Yeah, that's Night Train, Bradford. 10 bands on. Barbarian Hermit are playing. Fucking Wolves in Winter are playing. Human Condition are playing. Godeth, Leeds death metal band, are playing. We're playing. Godthrymm headliners. Did I mention Barbarian Hermit? They're playing. Yeah, it's gonna be amazing. There's loads of good bands on, so yeah, I've forgotten loads off of that list, so apologies if I've not mentioned you, but it's going to be amazing. So very much looking forward to that. Sunday, 31st of March, Easter Sunday, Night Train in Bradford. That's the first one we could confirm, but there will be more Godthrymm confirmations as and when we can say anything. So yeah, watch this space. So, right, time for my ranking, and I've decided to do a My Dying Bride ranking for a couple of reasons. I've been reminded of some of the back catalogue now, playing with Hamish in Godthrymm. Of course, Hamish, ex-My Dying Bride for about 14 years or whatever it was. So we've been discussing sort of his time in Bride when I've been meeting up and stuff, and it's reminded me of some of those albums and such. So, and having recently seen them at St George's Hall in Bradford with the Bride and My Dying Bride and Paradise Lost gig, that was fucking sensational. What a night that was. I've been diving back into the My Dying Bride catalogue. They're never too far away from my listening thoughts, if that makes any sense. I tend to not go too long between playing them in some shape or form. But yeah, so I've been diving back into My Dying Bride back catalogue, remembering some great moments that I'd kind of forgotten about over the years. And I thought, I'm going to do a Bride ranking. So here we go. On my previous videos, I've mentioned quite a lot of Bride stuff. So anyway, let's just fucking crack on. Nearly 5 minutes already. So the My Dying Bride ranking, in my opinion. Now, I must caveat that, and I know it's a fucking easy cop-out to sort of say, but hey, they've done no bad albums. And they kind of haven't, really. There is one album that I'm going to get onto shortly, which for me is clearly the weakest in their catalogue. But it's still not terrible. There are some really good tunes on it, but I'll discuss that. But yeah, I know it's an easy thing to fucking say, but honestly, there's not really any bad records in My Dying Bride's entire catalogue. And because they've got a new one coming this year, which I'm very excited about, I figured let's just fucking crack on with the ranking. Wonder where the new one will sit. We will find out. So, yeah, let's carry on. Now, I'm just doing the studio albums. I'm going to have a little nod to the EPs, or some of them at least anyway, as we go on. But, yeah, this is just the studio album, so I'm not covering any of the live stuff that they've released. And like I say, I will mention the EPs and the singles and so on and so forth. But this ranking is just the studio albums, or what counts as studio albums anyway. So according to my list, there are 14 studio albums. So I'm going to rattle through some of these really quickly because obviously I'm conscious of time. You know how conscious of time I am. I don't like to do overly long videos, as you avid viewers will well know. So anyway, my number 14, and the weakest in the My Dying Bride catalogue, and I've mentioned this on previous videos and a few other people have mentioned it, but my number 14 has to be this, 34.788% complete. It's an odd record, and I don't know, it just feels like it was My Dying Bride not really being themselves. If you've read the Hamish book, A Peaceville Life, it's a really good read. That if you haven't read it, get it read. There's plenty of bits on My Dying Bride throughout the book, but there's a good when they were recording this, and I think it just gives a little insight as to why this album maybe isn't as good as it could be, or was never destined to be great as such. But anyway, my thinking on it. It opens with an absolute belter. Let me get the full title right. The Holy Cook and the Mother. Yeah. Which I think's a cracking tune. I really like it. And if I did like a My Dying Bride best of, that would definitely get on it. I think it's a great tune. The rest of it, not so. There's quite a few forgettable moments on here, but I mean that opener's great. The closer, Under Your Wings and Into Your Arms, I like as well. And there was one other that I don't mind on it, Apocalypse Woman, I think it is. Although there's a couple of nice riffs in Der Überlebender, however you fucking pronounce it. Yeah, but there are a couple of real fucking swing and a miss on here. I'm talking, of course, of Base Level Erotica and Heroin Chic, which just doesn't... I appreciate the idea and the thought into it, but I just don't think it works as a concept. And there's a lot on here that gets skipped. But I have to say, there are a couple of absolute... And the opening track is an absolute fucking belter. It's a cracker. But yeah, my number 14, 34.788% complete. My number 13, and I don't have a physical copy of this. I never had it on CD. They did repress it on vinyl recently, but I've not got round to getting it, and I think I missed my chance anyway. But it is, image inserted, Evinter. Now, this is decent, and I love the take, the kind of symphonic take, classical take on My Dying Bride, and I think it works brilliantly. However, for me, it's a record that I will only very, very rarely listen to on... it's rare occasions that I listen to it. I've got to be just in that right frame of mind. Now, I'm a bit of a fan of classical music. I'm a big fan of Bartok and what's his name that did the Adagio for strings. I like a bit of classical music here and there, but I've got to be in the right mood for it. And this Evinter, I think, isn't bad by any means, but it doesn't really feel like a Bride album. I know that that was the idea behind it. It was a step away from them and something to do sort of more symphonic versions of their stuff. But yeah. So for me, that's the reason why it comes in at 13. Because to be honest with you, from this point onwards, it's really difficult to call. There's not a lot in a large chunk of these leading to number one. So yeah, Evinter comes in at my number 13 because it's not something I've immersed myself in massively because I've got to be in the right mood for it. And it just feels like a sort of step away from Bride when, if I'm going to put Bride on, I'll put some proper traditional Bride on. So yeah, that's why it's my number 13. But not a bad effort, I have to say. My number 12. When this come out, I rated it really highly, but I've realised it's an album that I've not gone back to massively. And I'll discuss a number of reasons for that. But my number 12 is the most recent effort, Ghost of Orion. And I think there's some cracking tunes on here. There's just this. I think the thing that I find not niggles at me, because I think it works in a sort of, but Aaron's vocal approach on it is very different to what they normally do, and I think on a couple of tracks works blindingly. I think it sounds great. The track's entitled, I mean, Your Woven Shore is a great song on here. Sorry, the opening track, Your Broken Shore, is the one that I'm talking about. Your Woven Shore is towards the end of it, isn't it? But yeah, Your Broken Shore, opening track, great one. And that was one of the lead singles off of this, or one of the lead tracks, I should say. And I thought, this is going to be mesmerising. And I thought that was a cracking way to start it. There's To Outlive the Gods. Tide of Tears is one of my favourites on here. I think it's a beautiful tune, and some of the melodies in there are great. And that vocal, that kind of orchestral vocal where you've got layer upon layer upon layer of Aaron's voice. Tide of Tears is absolutely perfect for that. I think it works beautifully. There's the other track, The Solace, which is one of my favourites on here. But that layered vocal thing dominates the whole album, and I just think it doesn't necessarily work on all of it, just on some of it. So that's why this comes in at my number 12. It is not by any means a bad record at all. I think it's a great album. But I just kind of measured this ranking on albums that I go back to regularly, and I don't tend to dip into this one anywhere near as much as I do others. So that's why Ghost of Orion is my number 12. There'll be a couple in here, by the way, that I've only got a download of, so a couple of image one, and some that I'm fucking positive I had on CD, but I can't find it. But anyway, so my number 11, 2006 was it from? For Lies I Sire. Again, it's a strong album. It's a great album. It's a strong Bride album, and it does what they do really well. I've just putting it up against, this is kind of like the Hamish period. This is, like I say, albums that I've been discussing with Hamish when I've been meeting up with him recently, and yeah, this is one of the, is this the lowest ranking of the Hamish period? I think it is. I suppose Evinter counts as that. But yeah, I think there's some great songs on this. There are other albums that I think there are more great songs on it. So that's the only reason why this comes in at number 11, because I think it's a strong record. Like I say, Image was inserted because I've not managed to get any physical copy of this yet. I don't think I ever owned it on CD. And they've done a vinyl repress, but I'm building up to that. So yeah, so at the minute I'm happy with the downloaded version of it. But yeah, some crackers on here. My Body a Funeral is a fucking great tune on this album. Bring Me Victory and the last track. This name fucking escapes me. I've just put last track. But yeah, there's some really strong tracks on this one. But for reasons as I just mentioned previous, that comes in at my number 11. What comes in at my number 10, and another one that I've only got download on, I've got no physical media of, image inserted, A Map of All My Failures. Sorry, All Our Failures. Again, I think there's some really strong tracks on this. Just not as many on as we get further into the ranking. And yeah, I think I like the production on this album. It's a really strong, really fucking gut punch guitar sound on this album, if I remember rightly. And the favourite track that I've mentioned, My Faults Are Your Reward. Is that the opening track? Anyway, whichever one it is. But yeah, again, there's some strong tracks on this album, but not one that I go back to as much as other ones. So yeah, that's why that came in at my number 10. My number 9, and another one from the Hamish period, is image inserted, Line of Deathless Kings. I'm fucking certain I had this on CD, but I can't find it. So I'm going to have to fucking purchase it again. Again, got the download. But yeah, my number 9, A Line of Deathless Kings. Again, really strong. I do like the production on this album. I think it's a really strong fucking powerful production on it. And there's some belting tunes. Lost my notes here. To Remain Tombless, I Cannot Be Loved, The Blood, The Wine, The Roses. Some really strong, traditional, classic My Dying Bride tunes on this record. And yeah, I think it's ace. I think it's a cracking record. And now I've said number 9 there. We get tough here. I would say all of the top 10 are albums that I regularly will go back to because I think they're really fucking strong. And classic My Dying Bride. But yeah, again, purely because there's albums that I prefer more on. That's why this comes at my number 9. My number 8 is 2015's album, Feel the Misery. There are some stunners on here, but yeah, just not quite to the level of what's coming after it. But there's some absolute gems, and this is what a lot of people saw this as a return to form. But yeah, which I feel like it probably was. But yeah, sensational stuff. Oh, hang on, I've got a delivery again. Sorry, delivery. Right, where was I? Feel the Misery. Number 8. Yeah. As I was explaining, I think this is a really, really, really strong album, and there's some cracking tracks on it. And My Father Left Forever is a great way to open it. One of my favourite, possibly in my top 10 of Bride tunes. To Shiver in Empty Halls, I think that's an amazing song. And I was lucky enough to catch them playing that live at Damnation, not last year, the year before. Which, yeah, really worked well live. And to be honest with you, I'd kind of forgotten about this album, and it was hearing him play that live. And I'll allude to that later on about hearing Bride live. I Almost Love You, which I really, really liked as well. Did I make a note of any of the others? Where is it? Oh, the title track, fucking idiot. Feel the Misery. Yeah. There's some bona fide classics on it. There's just a tiny little bit of filler, I would say. But the strength of this album, I think, was partly the reason this, like I say, I think this was 2015, wasn't it? The 5-year gap between that and Ghost of Orion. I'd been so built up waiting for Ghost of Orion that I think it had quite a tough act to follow as well. And that long gap, I think, meant that Ghost was always maybe going to suffer after having to follow that. So, yeah, that might sort of explain why Ghost of Orion came in at 12. Was it 12? Yeah, 12. So, yeah, number 8, Feel the Misery. Number 7, again, certain I have this on CD, but I can't find it. The Dreadful Hours. 2001, is it 2001? This is a sensational record, and there's some bona fide classics on this. And we're still at the, I'd say we're right at the back end of classic period Bride, even though 34.788% comes within that time frame. But yeah, I think it's this album where Bride start to shift to a slightly different dynamic as such, but there's some absolute stellar classics on it. I'm so annoyed that I don't have the physical of it, because like I say, we're in top 7 land here. So, but yeah, The Dreadful Hours. The title track itself is a absolute classic Bride song. With just that sort of melancholic, sort of tender guitar sort of opening into it with Aaron's vocals, his pained vocals over the top of it, the rain lashing down in the background. I think I think it's a beautiful tune. I really, really like it. The Raven and the Rose is another really strong track on here. What else have I made a mention of? Oh, My Hope the Destroyer. I really like that song as well. And it's consistently decent, is this record, but not as consistently decent as the top 6, I would say. So yeah, that is why The Dreadful Hours comes in at my number 7. My number 6, and just outside the top 5. Now there may be some gasps from a few of you. And I was just discussing this with my mate Lee from Crow's Blood, shout out Lee, about my ranking. And yeah, he made me have a little bit of a rethink. This was slightly higher in my ranking, but yeah, discussing it with Lee, I sort of thought, actually, yeah, I've ranked this a little too high. So it came down, and I think 6 is the perfect spot for it. My number 6 is the debut full length, As the Flower Withers. This is a masterpiece. There's no denying that. It's an absolute classic, and it put Bride on the map. I got into them via the EP that came first, Symphony, which I will discuss shortly, very briefly. But this is just monstrous. See Me, Forever People, Vast Choirs, The Bitterness and the Bereavement, Return of the Beautiful. Stellar classics on here. The reason I've knocked it down to 6 is for a couple of things. I think it's very much a child of its time, and does it feel a tiny bit dated now? Possibly, yes. But I think the reason it feels a tiny bit dated now leads into my second point about this, too. B, which is the production's quite weird on this album. It's a very kind of like, it's a weird flat drum sound. And yeah, sort of slightly, I'm probably describing it badly, but sort of the compressed nature of all the guitar sound on it and stuff like that. And yeah, I think that the production on this is what kind of dates it. If that makes sense, does that make sense? It dates it as a child of its time, but I think also is why, the more I thought about it, I thought, yeah, it just needs to drop out of that top 5, I think, because there are 5 better albums. So cheers, Lee. But I love it. There's some great tracks on it, and I remember playing this to death, this record, when it first came out, and well, throughout the years as well, I've played it to death. But there's one bit, and I was on about this, there's a bit where it's always baffled me why they didn't redo it, and I can only think it was because it was a mistake that sounded a lot worse, that this was as good as they could make it. But CME, when that comes in, it starts with the drums, doesn't it? Then you get your bass rumbling. And it's when that guitar comes in that goes down. I've listened to it so many times. That comes in out of time, doesn't it? Just ever so slightly. It's slightly out of time how it comes in. It just kind of abruptly down, and it jumps in. I'm like, that's definitely slightly out of time, isn't it? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills sometimes. Why no one else has really discussed this, and I can only think that it was always out of time, and that's as good as they could get it. But it's always like, why? I remember saying, why did they never redo that bit? Because it sounds like it comes in out of time for me. Listen to it back. I think it comes in out of time. But anyway, it doesn't detract from what is one of their greatest songs of all time in CME. It's a fabulous tune. But yeah, just one of them, and it just dropped out of the. I had this originally at number 4, I think it was. It might have even been higher, but yeah, it's dropped out. It's number 6 now, and rightly so. Okay, before we get on with the top 5, I'm going to discuss the EPs now. Annoyingly, because this is just for studio albums, I've got loads of EPs on vinyl, so I've felt the need to discuss them. Their most recent release, the Macabre Cabaret single 12-inch EP, whatever you want to call it, really strong. This really liked it, and I feel like there's a couple of tunes on it that could have easily got on Ghost of Orion. So anyway, yeah, really like that. Thought that were decent. This I love, the Barguest O Whitby single. Now this is part of a greater, is the Vaulted Shadows EP that this is on for like CD and digital and so on and so forth. This 12-inch is just the Barguest, which runs over both sides because it's like 20 odd minutes to tune, isn't it? Yeah, like 28 minutes, is it, something? Part 1 side A, part 2 side B. I adore this track, and it was such a, if you think about timing wise when it came out around Evinter, didn't it? And was it the Map of All Our Failures album? It's one of them around that time. And I think this is so good. And like I say, there's nothing wrong with them, but I just think this is such a strong tune. I really like it. So I'm a massive fan of this. And this has had some serious plays as this. Reissue. I did used to have this on the original. Alas, no more. But Peaceville reissued it at a decent enough price, so I grabbed a copy of it. I Am the Bloody Earth, of course, which is one of my favourite Bride tunes of all time. And sorry, further interruption. Anyway, back to it. I was discussing I Am the Bloody Earth. And yeah, I absolutely love this. Yeah, it's fucking fantabulous. So yeah, really strong EP. This I get this confused with Thrash and Naked Limbs as to which one come first. I'm sure it was Thrash come first because this has got Crown of Sympathy on it, hasn't it? Yeah, which is around the Swans era. But I'm the Bloody Earth is a really strong tune. Massive fan of it. So yeah, great EP. The song I was just on about, the Thrash of Naked Limbs. I was discussing it before, seeing him at the St George's Hall recently. They open with this track, Thrash of Naked Limbs. It's one of my favourite Bride tunes of all time. It's fucking immense. And yeah, I were lucky enough. We were rehearsing with Croswell. We rehearsed down at a place in Bradford, and Bride were in rehearsing for these, these few dates that they did with Paradise Lost. They were in rehearsing the set in the room next door. So we sort of stopped. We finished at a Croswell tune, and I could hear that sort of violin section in the near the intro of Thrasher Naked Limbs. So just at that point, I'm outside the room, just stood at the door. I remember taking a video for Green Sabre lads saying, listen who's in next door. Fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, that was quite a boon. Absolutely loved this EP. And there were so many strong EPs from Bride. It's difficult to discuss them all. The last one that I'll mention briefly is the very first thing that I heard of them, Symphonia Infernus et Spera Imperium. Yeah, as Symphonia I just tend to know it as. But what a strong start. And again, it's that violin intro, wallop into that really heavy riff. Absolutely love it. So yeah, shout out to the EPs there just briefly, because they've done some stunning EP and single work of Bride over the years. Right, top 5. And coming in at my number 5 is this. The Angel and the Dark River. This is a reissue on vinyl, because I feel like the original's in the white outer frame, whereas this is the black outer frame version of it as such. Like, it's not consistently incredible like the rest of my top 5 is, but there are some absolute monsters on this album. Particularly the opening track that is one of my favourite My Dying Bride tracks of all time, The Cry of Mankind. I just think it's absolutely mesmerising. And I often, watching Neil, the current rhythm guitarist, playing it live, Neil has the unenviable job of having to basically, the harmony that runs throughout this, that it's basically got to play that for about 8 minutes. I think he deviates out of it once, maybe, with another riff. But he's just got to play that sort of hammer on that. I mean, the just concentration levels that must be needed to, it doesn't look overly complicated, of course not, but he's just got to play that relentlessly for 8 minutes. And I have nothing but respect for for him having to play it, which must be ace to get to play it, because like I say, it's one of my favourite songs of all time. But yeah, it must be quite mentally tiring having to just sit on that hammer-on riff for 8 minutes. Yeah. So, but what a tune. From Darkest Skies is another great one that follows it. Did I mention? Wait. Yeah, Black Voyage. That follows it. Sorry, yeah. Fucking useless. Sexuality of Bereavement is a great way to close this album. A Seat of Suffering I really like as well. 2 Winters Only. There's loads of bangers on this album. It's a cracker, and that is why it's deservedly in my top 5. But honestly, for Cry of Mankind alone, it might have made my top 5, quite honestly. I love the track that much. So yeah, my number 5, The Angel and the Dark River. My number 4, and I've only got this on CD currently. I want it on vinyl though. I must have it on vinyl at some point. My number 4, The Light at the End of the World. This is an album which, I will be honest, when it first come out and first listened to it, it didn't do much for me. I felt like Bride, I don't know what just my listening preferences at the time or whatever it was. Is it 95 this? No, sorry, just later than that, isn't it? I'm thinking of another album that'll come shortly. It's 99, sorry, yeah. Just in it there, like, should have worn my spectacles. Yeah, and I feel like they weren't quite on my radar as much. I don't know, I can't remember what I was listening to at that time. Probably nu metal or something. But anyway, whatever it was. Yeah, it didn't quite resonate with me. It's an album that I came back to a few years later and realised, that's amazing. When I started going through the old Doom cycle again, which often happens, yeah, I revisited this. Early 2000s. I think it was around the time that another album came out that I'm going to mention shortly, and it made me dive back into him again, and I learned to appreciate this album for what it is, which is an absolute masterpiece. It's a fucking cracking album, is this. There are so many great songs on this album. The opener, She Is the Dark, great opener, great song. They played this at St George's Hall as well, and reminding me just how good it is. And I've recently been re-listening to this album quite a lot and reminding myself just how good it is. Eden Beast, great way to follow it up. Night He Died, The Light at the End of the World, which is a beautiful, sprawling title track. Forever Sea, Isis Script I really like. Same Me 3 as well. They've done 3 versions of Same Me, this being the 3rd one. Might be my 3rd favourite of the 3 Same Me's, but anyway, that's regardless. This album is absolutely stunning. It's a stellar piece of work. But I personally have 3 more that I prefer. So yeah, that's why that's my number 4. My number 3, and this one I've been this one has skyrocketed up my ranking recently. And it's because of seeing them at St George's Hall, and they put in a track, Godthrymm Blake, in the set list. And I'd not listened to this album for a while. And hearing that again live just was like, oh man, I've forgotten how great this is. And this is the album that made me go back and revisit and relearn just how good The Light at the End of the World is. I'm talking about Songs of Darkness, Words of Light. 2004, I want to say. I think it's like they say, the Hamish era. I think, is this the 3rd album from the Hamish era? Or is this even possibly the 2nd one? It might be the 2nd one. The Dreadful Hours from 2001, weren't they? So this potentially might be the 2nd one. But anyway, re-listening and diving back at, like I say, when this came out at the time, I remember really liking it and thinking, oh, that's decent. I think leading up to that, you'd had, like I say, Light at the End of the World, which was such a welcome return after 34.788%. And then, yeah, this one come, and I remember quite liking it at the time I saw it anyway. Having recently revisited, I've just remembered how many songs I love off of this, and I love the production on this as well. The opener, The Wreckage of My Flesh, is a stunning piece of work. Cracking song. Goes into another cracker, Scarlet Garden. Then, Godthrymm Blake, My Wine in Silence. Side A, the first half of the album, side A and B, it is absolutely as strong as any Bride opening 4 tracks, I would argue, personally. I think it's absolutely immense. Does it slightly tail off after that? Possibly, because the opening 4 tracks are so strong, but you've still got some decent tracks on C and D as well. A Doom Glover to finish it is an absolute belter. So yeah, my number 3, Sons of Darkness, Words of Light. I think it's an immense album, and having recently revisited it, I've only had that confirmed. Just amazing. My number 2, now probably higher in some people's rankings, but I've just got such a soft spot for this record because there's so many songs that I loved at the time and just have resonated, have stayed with me, and I think that's why. My number 2 is 1996, Like Gods of the Sun. Again, another masterpiece. Production withstanding, the production's slightly odd on this album. It's not as powerful and as in your face as some other Bride albums that I've just previously mentioned, but there's some absolute gems on here. This is the my battered old copy of the Digipack. Yeah, just immense. The opening track, Like Gods of the Sun, is an absolute belter. There's The Dark Caress, A Kiss to Remember, All Swept Away. For You is one of my favourite tracks on here. I think that's a great one. For My Fallen Angel is just weep-inducingly fabulous. There is some almost over-accentuated Bride wonderment on here. And like I say, For My Fallen Angel, you could almost say it is in danger of becoming a parody of itself. It's so miserable and melancholy. But it's beautiful. And it's just such a good record. And it's, like I said, my top 5, it's so tight when you get to 2, 3, 4 and 5 as to where they sit. But I felt this was a worthy number 2. So, yeah. My number 2, Like Gods of the Sun. My number 1, and you know where I all know where this is leading, but I would say comfortably. Like I say, it's all very tight when you get in the top 10, really tight when you get to the top 5. But there was never any doubt in my mind what was going to be number one. And it is, of course, 1993's Turn Loose the Swans. This is one of my favourite. It's in the top 5 albums of all time for me, I would say, is this. Possibly even top 3 albums of all time. I absolutely adore this record. I think it is a masterpiece on every level. And I would say comfortably Bride's Finest Hour, because the, hang on, what have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7 tracks on here are all 10 out of 10. They're all classics. This is a 10 out of 10, an absolutely faultless record, I would say. It's just brilliant. The sort of symphonic piano-based version of See Me that opens it, it's just breathtaking. And I remember when it came out at the time, just being absolutely blown away by it. Just how effective it was. The production is so crisp and so heavy, certainly compared to their previous full length as The Flower Withers. So the production levels on here have just been ramped up. And like I say, See Me, what a way to open into, you could argue, My Dying Bride's finest song of all time, Your River. Just incredible, incredible. I mean, I basically would just rattle through all these songs and say incredible, incredible, but it's that good a record. Songless Bird, Snow in My Hand, Crown of Sympathy, Turn Loose the Swans, the title track, which again is right up there. I think my top 2 Bride songs of all time are Your River and the title track, and the track Turn Loose the Swans, and they're both on this. I even love Black God that finishes it. I think it's a really good sort of step away from the heaviness that you've had. It kind of bookends it beautifully. You've had that sort of symphonic piano opener in See Me, 1993, I believe all the Roman numerals signify. And then Black God with that sort of keys and violin finish to it. I think it bookends the album brilliantly, and you've got the monstrously heavy, doomy, melancholic wonderment of the 5 tracks that sit between it. It is an album without fault, as I've just said, and that's why it's my number 1 in my Bride ranking. Right, that still went on for far too fucking long, but they have done a lot of albums, so that's my excuse. So yeah, thanks for watching. That was my Dying Bride ranking. You may agree with it, you may disagree with it. I'll tell you someone who has disagreed with something recently. I got a dislike on my Album of the Year ranking. I can only assume that was either the Tardy brothers from Obituary, who didn't like my take on their album from last year, or some other bellend who just don't watch it if you don't like it. Don't give me a dislike, you fucking arse. But anyway, so yeah, a dislike. But yeah, let's hope I don't get any dislikes on this one. For maybe the 34.788% gang will come out in force and tell me just how wrong I am. But anyway, your thoughts on this, put in the comments. Thanks to my kind of little flurry of new subscribers. I'm up to 170 odd now, which I'm very, very pleased about. That's great. So thank you guys for putting up with my fucking nonsense. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for liking. Further updates next week. Again, I'll just keep you on your toes because I kind of play this, make this up as I go along really, so I don't know what next week's video will be. But until next week, thanks guys. I'll see you later. Cheerio.